And evening, everyone. This is Padman of Templo Anitohan ng Lumpiang Agama here in San Jose del Monte, Bulacan. And it's already 15th day of the month, which is the new year, the first month of the year 2026. Happy New Year, everyone. So tonight, we are going to start a new devotional study and peace prayer that we are going to weave around the world. But before we start, let me just light this incense so that we could set the mood. So this is a pre-recorded video because on the 11th of the month, we are going to start a new training cycle for Hilat Binabaylan ministry program. No? So let me just offer this. So it's just quick offering of the incense so that we could start our peace prayer. So on the 11th up to 20th, me and Lakay is going to Taguig at Bahay Santana because we have a new student of Hilat Binabaylan practice. And for 9 days, we are going to initiate them to the ways of the ancient healing art and science of Filipino. But anyway, tonight is a special night for us, so I hope you are ready to light your candle and incense for the purpose of living peace. So tonight we are going to do the prayer of remembrance, healing, and peaceful coexistence in commemoration of the victims of the Holocaust and the call to peaceful coexistence. So join me in praying for peace. Let us pray. Eternal source of life, holy mystery known by many names, guardian of memory, justice, and peace. We gather in reverence and humility, carrying the weight of history and the hope of a shared future. On this sacred moment of remembrance, we honor the millions of lives lost in the Holocaust, victims of hatred, violence, and indifference, children, elders, families, and communities whose dignity was denied and whose suffering cries out against across generations. May their memory be a sacred responsibility, awakening our conscience and strengthening our resolve to confront injustice wherever it arises. Heal the wounds borne by survivors and their descendants. Transformed inherited trauma into wisdom, remembrance into vigilance, and grief into a commitment to protect life and human dignity. As we remember the devastation caused by division and dehumanization, we also lift our prayer for peaceful coexistence among all peoples. Teach us to live with respect for difference of faith, culture, identity, and belief, recognizing diversity not as a threat, but as a gift to our shared humanity. May dialogue replace silence, understanding overcome fear, and compassion triumph over cruelty. Help us remember that peace is not merely the absence of violence, but the presence of justice, the practice of empathy, and the courage to choose one another, even in the midst of pain and disagreement. Inspire nations and leaders to act with humility and moral responsibility, guide communities to become places of refuge, and individuals to become bridges of reconciliation. May peaceful coexistence begin within our hearts, shaping our words, guiding our actions, and radiating outward to our families, societies, and the world. Let remembrance guard us against repeating the horrors of the past, and let coexistence lead us toward a future where every human life is honored and every community can live in dignity and peace. May we walk forward together, remembering, healing, and choosing peace. And it is so, so mote it be. So this January, um, we remember those who are victims of the Holocaust. So it was a Jewish persecution. And then the month of January invites the global community into a sacred work of memory and moral reflection through the commemoration of the victims of Holocaust and the observation of the International Day of Peaceful Coexistence. Humanity is called to remember its deepest wound, and from that remembrance to renew its commitment to dignity, justice, and peace. The Holocaust stands as one of the history's most devastating warning of what can happen when hatred is normalized, difference is demonized, and human beings are stripped of their dignity. The systematic persecution and murder of 6 million Jewish people, along with the millions of others who were targeted for their identity, beliefs, or existence, was not only the result of violence, but of silence, indifference, and the failure to protect one another. To remember the victims of the Holocaust is not merely to look back in sorrow, but to carry forward a sacred responsibility to resist dehumanization in all its forms and to ensure that such atrocities are never repeated. Remembrance, however, is incomplete unless it leads us towards transformation. This is why the call for peaceful coexistence is inseparable from Holocaust commemoration. Peaceful coexistence challenges us to move beyond tolerance toward mutual respect, understanding, and shared responsibility. It invites us to acknowledge diversity of faith, culture, identity, and tradition, not as a threat but as a source of collective strength and enrichment. In a world still marked by polarization, conflict, and inherited trauma, peaceful coexistence is both a moral and imperative and a daily practice. It calls individuals, communities, and nations to choose dialogue over division, empathy over fear, and cooperation over domination. It reminds us that peace is not simply the absence of war, but the presence of justice, compassion, and active care for one another. This devotional study begins with the remembrance and leads us towards responsibility by honoring the memory of Holocaust victim and embracing the call to peaceful coexistence. We affirm a shared truth that humanity is bound together by memory, accountable for its choices, and capable, through courage, humility, and love, of shaping a more just and compassionate world. May this time of reflection deepen our awareness, strengthen our resolve, and inspire us to become better of peace in our own lives in the wider world. What was the Holocaust and why did it happen? So this is the reason. The Holocaust, also known by the Hebrew as Shoah, meaning catastrophe, was the systematic state-sponsored persecution and murder of 6 million Jewish people by the Nazi government, by the Nazi Germany and its allies between 1933 and 1945. During the time of the Second World War, it was not an accident, tragedy of war, but a deliberate genocide carried out through laws, propaganda, forced segregation, mass shooting, starvation, and industrialized killing and extermination camps such as Auschwitz, Birkenau, Treblinka, Sobibor, and others. In addition to Jewish victims, the Nazi regime also targeted and murdered millions of others, including Roma people, persons with disabilities, political dissidents, homosexuals, prisoners of war, and members of other persecuted groups. Children, elder, families, and entire communities were stripped of their humanity and reduced to numbers, transport discs, and ashes. Why did the Holocaust happen? The Holocaust did not arise suddenly or without a warning. It was the outcome of multiple interconnected forces that unfolded over many years. It, as its core was anti-Semitism, the long-standing hatred, prejudice, and dehumanization of Jewish people. Anti-Semitism had deep historical roots in Europe, sustained over centuries through religious hostility, social exclusion, false accusation, and discriminatory laws. The Nazi regime drew upon these existing prejudices and radicalized them into a racial ideology that defined Jewish identity as a biological threat rather than a religious or cultural differences. When Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party rose to power in Germany in 1933, they fused anti-Semitism with extreme nationalism, racist pseudoscience, and authoritarian control. Jews were falsely portrayed as enemies of the nation, responsible for economic hardship, social decay, and Germany's defeat in the First World War. Through propaganda, education, and law, hatred was normalized and violence was justified. The Holocaust also became possible because of silence, conformity, and collaboration. Many ordinary people obeyed discriminatory laws, benefited from stolen property, or looked away as neighbors were arrested and deported. Institutions failed to resist. In occupied territories, local collaborators assisted Nazi forces. The absence of sustained moral resistance allowed cruelty to grow unchecked. Finally, the conditions of war expanded the reach of genocide. Under the cover of World War II and the breakdown of normal legal protections, the Nazi leadership implemented what they called the final solution, the plan to murder every Jewish person in Europe. By the end of the war, nearly two-thirds of Europe's Jewish population had been annihilated. Why this history matters for peaceful coexistence? The Holocaust teaches us a devastating truth. Genocide began long before violence, when human beings are divided into us and them, when fear replaces empathy, and when difference is treated as danger rather than dignity. It reveals how hatred can be made ordinary, how injustice can be legalized, and how silence can become complicity. To remember the Holocaust is therefore not only to honor the dead, but to protect the living. It reminds us that peaceful coexistence is not passive tolerance, but an active moral choice to resist dehumanization and to defend human dignity and to build societies rooted in justice, dialogue, and mutual responsibility. In remembering what happened, we are called to ask not only how could this occur, but how shall we live differently. The commemoration of the Holocaust and the call to peaceful coexistence do not ask us merely to remember history, but to remember how to remain human. These observances become empty if they remain only ceremonial. They are meant to shape conscience, awaken responsibility, and guide actions. Number one, the sacred dignity of every human life. This is the lessons that we have to learn. The Holocaust teaches with devastating clarity what happens when human beings are reduced to labels, stereotypes, or threats. When any group is treated as less than human, violence becomes thinkable and even executable. Every life carries sacred worth that must never be conditional, that a race, religion, nationality, gender, ability, or belief. We remember so that no person is ever again made expendable. Second lessons that we have to learn from this uh, devotion is hatred grows when silence replaces courage. The Holocaust was not only the result of evil leadership, but of widespread silence. Neighbors who looked away, institutions that complied, and societies that normalized injustice. The lessons we have to learn or to be mindful of is evil flourishes when good people quiet. This is the reason why we speak up. We need to speak up because silence tolerates evil and it flourishes to conquer everyone, just like what happened in the Holocaust. We remember that neutrality in the face of injustice is not peace, and silence can become complicity. Third lesson, difference is not the enemy. dehumanization is. I think you are experiencing that. If you are different, they think that you are the enemy, such as every day we have experienced this, that because we are different from the others, we have different faith belief, and we are the demon. Genocide begins long before violence. It begins with the language that divides, narrative that assigns blame, and ideologies that turn difference into danger. Peaceful coexistence is not about erasing differences, but about honoring differences without fear. Our prayer, we remember that diversity is not a threat to humanity, but one of its greatest strengths. Number four, remembrance demands responsibility. To remember rightly is to allow memory to change how we live. Holocaust remembrance challenges each generation to ask, what are we preventing today? Whose dignity are we defending now? Lesson, memory must move us from never again as a slogan to never again as a daily practice. Our prayer, we remember not only the dead, but our duty to the living. What peace weavers are called to do, actions for peace weavers on January 2026 and beyond. Peace weavers are not only people who pray for peace, but people who practice peace. The lessons of remembrance becomes flesh through intentional action. That is why when last year, 2025, our theme for the Interfaith Order of Peace Weaver is formation. We are forming our curriculum, our training manual, but this year we are called to embody what we have learned. It is an action to fulfill what we have said, we have promised as a peace weaver. So number one, this is the actions that we need to do. Guard human dignity in everyday spaces. Peace weaver challenge prejudice, stereotyping, and hate speech. Gently but firmly in homes, school, workplace, social media, and communities. So we are not just praying for peace, but we are standing for the peace that we want to have in this world. No? Speak up when dignity is diminished. Refuse language that dehumanizes. Model respectful dialogue across differences. So refuse language that dehumanizes. So we have to be very careful on the words we speak out. You know? Even as a Filipino, you know, English is my second language. Before I speak, I think. Although sometimes the words that I use might be different from others, but please, I ask already forgiveness. I might not really understand what I am saying, but what I want to say or meant to say is that we have to be careful with the words we speak out because word has power to create and to destroy. So we choose to create. But what kind of creation are we going to create? Nowadays, every people has the power to create, and they are creating content to entertain. But what kind of entertainment people wanted to see? For me, I might sound boring, or even here at the Interfaith Order of Peace Weaver, you might not be watching this or hearing my podcast, but I need to speak up, to record, to video, so that people may know that we are standing for peace. And this is what we are standing for. Number two, practice deep listening and dialogue. Peaceful coexistence grows when people are willing to hear stories different from their own, especially stories shaped by pain, trauma, and historical wounds. Actually, you, dedicated member of Peace Weaver, are very proficient or very good on listening. I want to hear from you now. Speak up, make comment below. What is in your thought? How could you help? We need you. I need you. I need you. in disorder because our world needs more peace weaver than before, no? Especially to what had happened in Venezuela. Okay, I might use this time to speak up. Government leaders must respect one another. One country has their autonomy. It is like that a family should not be interfered with other family. They have to stand. If there is some trouble inside the house, there is the father, the mother who will discipline their child. But don't let other house come to your house just to fix and to tell you what to do. I believe that every person must learn through their experiences. And whatever experiences that they are experiencing right now is a lesson to be learned. One country going to another country and saying, don't do that, don't do this, is colonization. We as a country have been colonized. But what President Trump had done, it might be good to some, but the people of Venezuela must learn their lessons. They must stand up by themselves. The people of Venezuela and the whole world are separated now because some they said what Trump did is good, but others said it's not. But regardless, let us consider one country to be independent, autonomous. They have their own sovereignty, and do not let other country do that. We are done with colonization, and it is the time now to decolonize, to embrace our own identity. But I hope that the interfaith order of Peace River could create a safe space for interfaith intercultural dialogue. We will strive to listen without needing to convince or correct, and learn histories that are not your own. We really need to understand one another so that we could respect one another. Number three, transform memory into education. One of the strongest protection against future violence is truthful education. Peace weavers help ensure that painful histories are neither forgotten nor distorted. On my part, sometimes there is a part of me that do not believe already on the educational system that being standardized by our government. Probably they know what is best for us, but many of us have forgotten who we really are. And when I was in college or in high school, many of my classmates will say they hope that we are also part of America because of the money is so strong. But then, as I see, we have all the resources here in our country, the Philippines. We have all the talents that we need in order to enrich ourselves. Sometimes history is being changed by the one who lead the government. But the story of the people will never change. The lives of the people, if you go to the rural areas, if you go to the mountain, you will still remember the history of the land. Our problem as a as a pagan minister here in the Philippines, we do not have ancient temple or ruins. We do not know. There is no recording. There is no written history that could tell about what happened, how our ancestors worshiped the gods and the goddess. But I am so glad that the mountains speak, the tree, the river, and the sea All of God's creation are present that have witnessed the lives in the past, and through that we learn and we are rediscovering the ancient ways of our ancestors. So it is said, transform memory into education. One of the strongest protection against future violence is truthful education. Peace weavers help ensure that painful histories are neither forgotten nor distorted. And we are retrieving the memories of the past through the ancient land, through the rocks, through the seas, through the tree. And I am so thankful that our tradition, the Korean tradition, have shared us the technique on how to communicate with spirits, with the rock, and to retrieve information from them through psychometry and other techniques. So, share accurate historical narratives, encourage ethical education rooted in empathy, mentor younger generation toward moral courage. Number four, choose compassion over convenience. Peace often requires discomfort, speaking when it will be easier to stay quiet, welcoming when it will be easier to withdraw. Action stand with those who are marginalized, advocate for justice, and even when unpopular, choose mercy over indifference. Number five, peace begin within. Peaceful coexistence is not only political or global, it begins eternally. Prejudice, fear, and anger must be acknowledged and transformed within the self. So, action, practice self reflection and inner healing. Release inherited hatred and unexamined bias. Let prayer reshape attitude, not just intention. So, how to integrate this lesson on into the January 2026 peace prayer? As peace weaver, as peace weaver prays in January 2026, let the prayer becomes a covenant, not only an invocation, a commitment to remember truthfully, a resolve to live ethically, a willingness to protect dignity, a choice to practice coexistence. We remember the past so not to repeat it. We pray for peace so as to live it. We choose coexistence so humanity may endure. So join me here, a peace we will pledge for January 2026 for remembrance and responsible peace. In remembrance of the victims of Holocaust, in response to call the peaceful coexistence, I pledge myself as a peace weaver in thought, word, and action. I pledge to remember truthfully, honoring the lives of lost to hatred, violence, and difference, and refusing to forget the cause of dehumanization. I pledge to uphold the sacred dignity of every human life without exception, across differences of faith, culture, identity, ability, or belief. I pledge to resist hatred wherever it appears, in language, policies, systems, or silence, and to speak with courage when dignity is threatened. I pledge to choose dialogue over division, empathy over fear, and understanding over prejudice, even when such choices demand patience, humility, and courage. I pledge to practice peaceful coexistence daily in my home and community, in public spaces and private thoughts, knowing that peace begins within and ripples outward to the world. I pledge to transform memory into responsibility, prayer into practice, and hope into action, so that never again becomes only a promise, but a lived commitment. With humility, resolve, and compassion, I commit myself to this path of peace. And it is so, so not be, mayari na pag-asatin. I hope that this prayer encourages us all to live peace, and I hope that this year will be a year of embodiment of all of the lessons we have learned in the past, and even in continuity of our devotion on becoming a peace builder. So again, this is Apadman of Templong Ano ng Luntin Agama for the Interfaith Order of Peace Weaver, saying, may you all blessed be peace. Mayari nga, pag-asatin. Paalam.